Hello, my loves. Welcome back to another episode of the LCMHC Mystic Musings. If you're new to this corner of space, welcome to the LCMHC Musings. I'm Christine Free, a licensed clinical mental health counselor, energy healer, hypnotherapist, Jungian shamanic practitioner, yoga instructor, mystic mother, a lifelong seeker of the alchemy between psychology and spirituality, and your LCMHC Mystic. This podcast is a sacred corner of the world where mind and mysteries sit together, where healing becomes multidimensional and where your inner world is honored as deeply as your outer one. My intention is that each time you listen, you feel more seen, a little more connected, and gently reminded that you are everything and nothing less. I would love to offer a deep, deep gratitude to my followers and my listeners and donors. You help this sacred corner reach a wider circle. Your likes, follows, and donations are more than just a drop of water in the ocean. They are literally the whole ocean, and they mean so, so much to me. So, with the deepest love, thank you. So are we ready? We have a little longer episode today, but I am so excited for the content. Today we're diving into something that came up in a client session that totally gave me one of the coolest metaphors I might have ever come up with. And if you know me and if you're my client, you know I talk a lot in metaphors. And when they come to me, they just show up. I think the term is a download. But so this particular one, in this episode, I'm talking about masking and the idea that our masks are actually retainers. So what if our masks were never meant to hide us, but gently realign us? Like retainers, masks, remember me and my S's, they're just tough. Masks guide us into alignment. And in a session with this client, the metaphor arrived super clearly. Our masks function like Invisalign for the psyche. Subtle, gradual, powerful tools that help reshape us into our truest form. So this episode is a blend of neuroscience, psychology, spiritual symbolism, and lived experience. It's building on the foundations we've already laid together in previous episodes. Like episode 2, we explored how the mind filters and interprets reality. Our first hint that perception itself can act like a mask. In episode 3, we reminded us that when we're aligned with our current authentic self, we're more deeply connected to our source, to our God, to nature, and the world around us. And that alignment often depends on which, quotation marks here, mask or identity layer we're living from. And then our previous episode, in episode 4, we revealed how our earliest family roles become our first mask-like identities. So today, in episode 5, we're going to be naming what those masks truly are. Not lies, not failures, but retainers. Transitional identities holding us in place while we grow into a deeper alignment. Super excited for this. At the end of the show, I also want you to know that I'm going to be sharing a little sneak peek of what we're going to get into next. So I can't wait to take you on this musing with me. Let's dive in. Okay, so part one. I'm going to preface part one is the longest. It's the longest segment of this podcast today. And it's going to focus a lot on some psychoeducation. So, this first half, what masking actually is from psychoeducational lenses. So, as a therapist, I work with masks and masking all the time. And it's often dismissed as, I'm just being fake. But it is actually more accurately a complex adaptive behavior that all of us use consciously or unconsciously to navigate social expectations and to protect ourselves. So what does masking look like? It involves the way we alter our tone, our posture, facial expressions, body language, suppressing internal discomfort. It also looks like running rehearsed social scripts rather than responding spontaneously or authentically, and hiding true emotional states to preserve safety or connections. So in short, masking reshapes outward behavior to match perceived external demands. Now, why do we do this? We have a purpose. It arises from the genuine need and genuine needs and social pressure. We as humans, we have a desire and a need for connection, belonging, and acceptance. It is ingrained in our bodies. We fear rejection, discrimination, invalidation. We do this because environments reward conformity and penalize differences. It also stems from early trauma, neglect, inconsistency, which teaches the nervous system to prioritize survival and not authenticity. So this makes masking a very protective strategy, a form of psychic and somatic self-preservation. They're adaptive until they're not. So for many, masking serves a temporary or situational function. But when masks become constant, rigid, and identity erasing, there are real costs. And research and clinical writings link prolonged masking with emotional exhaustion and burnout. And this is from self-monitoring and suppression. It's linked with anxiety, depression, increased stress from external conflict and repression. It's linked with identity confusion or a weakened sense of self when the mask actually becomes the default self-image. And it's linked to delayed self-understanding and self-acceptance. So when core needs, feelings, or traits are repeatedly hidden. Masking can be short-term armor, but long-term liability when overused. So it's a universal behavior, but with important variations. We all mask to degrees, but how masking shows up in its intensity, frequency, and triggers varies widely depending on your personal history, your neurotype, environment, and trauma background. So for some, masking is a temporary social script. But for others, it becomes a lifelong survival posture. So today, as you listen, I'm going to invite you to reflect on these 3 questions. 1, where in my life do I habitually mask? What parts of me feel unsafe or, quotation marks here, too loud if unmasked? And 3, what was I trying to protect when I first put this mask, or later on retainer, on? So awareness doesn't equal removal, it equals choice. So we're going to get a little bit deeper into this. We've named masking in a general sense, but I want to zoom in the lens. So we're going to focus now on a group that has carried an enormous and often invisible masking burden. And these are our neurodivergent folks, especially autistic individuals. So while everyone masks, again, to some degree, with autistic masking, it has its own distinct features, pressures, and consequences. And I want to name this clearly and very respectfully. Autistic masking is one of the most misunderstood, overlooked, and chronically dismissed realities in our society. So it's not acting, it's not being difficult, it is not failing to fit in. It is a survival in a world built for neurotypical norms. And frankly, I'm going to say this, it's going to be a little sharp, but I think it's really shameful that our culture still expects autistic individuals to carry the full emotional, sensory, and psychological labor of masking just to be accepted and understood, or even being safe. This is not a neurodivergent issue. It's really a societal one. So, and I want to say, if this resonates with you, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being part of the shift. Let's keep pushing for environments, clinical, educational, communal, that honor neurodiversity, that reduce the need for masking, and make space for true inclusion, dignity, and humanity. So thank you. Now, getting deeper into autistic masking. For individuals with autism, it is a full body, multi-layered experience, and it is exhausting. So research shows that autistic masking, often called camouflaging, involves a complex set of adaptations across the body, expression, communication, and sensory regulation. These adaptations commonly include suppressing natural stimming, fidgeting, sensory responses. It forces mimicking eye contact. It includes, mirroring tone, so facial expressions, social timing, even humor, rehearsing conversational scripts, hiding or pushing through overwhelm in a very sensory heavy environment. So for many autistic people, masking begins right from the jump in early childhood, and then it becomes automatic because the environment teaches them, whether explicitly or implicitly, that, hey, their authentic expressions are not acceptable or safe. That is not a choice. That is a survival response. So coming from two consistent research findings from peer-reviewed work, we have one, high levels of autistic camouflaging are linked to increased psychological distress. Greater masking is associated with higher anxiety, depression, emotional strain. And this doesn't mean autistic people are fragile. It means the workload of masking is enormous. And two, masking is connected to burnout, delayed diagnosis, and identity struggles because masking can hide natural traits. Many autistic individuals are diagnosed later in life, which even sometimes decades later. And this results in chronic exhaustion, confusion about their identity, and long periods of unsupported mental health needs. So these findings point to society's failure to recognize and support neurodiversity, not a failure within autistic individuals. And there's a deep cost to that. So autistic masking involves all of the suppression that I talked about, and those aspects our sensory needs, movement patterns, communication styles, relational preferences, which then turn into long-term masking, and that will disrupt self-conception, emotional regulation, self-trust, clarity around one's identity. And this is why many autistic adults describe when they finally get to unmask, meeting themselves for the first time. And not because they were inauthentic before, but because they finally get to feel themselves without performance, pressure, or fear. That should be the standard from the get-go. Okay? So, the emotional and somatic toll for autistic adults, they report experiences of profound fatigue, autistic burnout, again, anxiety, depression, and other mental health diagnoses, trauma-like symptoms, emotional shutdown, and then sudden identity collapse when masking becomes unsustainable. Again, not because autistic people are too sensitive, quite the contrary, actually, but because no one can sustain constant self-suppression without consequence. So autistic masking is not the problem. The problem is that autistic individuals have been expected to shape themselves into neurotypical norms instead of us reshaping the world to include, to have that inclusivity. I have a hard time with words. So this mismatch is what causes harm. And we do need to do better as a whole. Now, another neurodivergent community that I'm going to touch on is ADHD masking. And I do this because I'm coming from a personal experience. Now, there are other neurodivergent specific masking. However, we'll save that for a separate talk because we'll get stuck in all of that. So I'm gonna branch into ADHD. So ADHD masking is so performance-based. So while autistic masking often centers around social mimicry and sensory suppression, ADHD masking tends to revolve around performance, competence, and avoiding shame. It's not about blending in. It's really more about not falling behind. And so ADHD traits don't disappear. They actually get buried under over-effort, over-functioning, and that pressure to perform. So research, it shows that individuals whose ADHD is masked through compensatory behaviors are significantly more likely to experience delayed or misdiagnosis. Hello, raising my hand, that's me, which will contribute to long-term burnout, identity confusion, emotional distress. And when you're performing a version of yourself just to maintain stability, you're not receiving support, you're surviving without a map. So ADHD masking often looks like an individual just trying to stay afloat. They do this by overcompensating to hide disorganization or executive dysfunction. We do this by mirroring others' behavior to avoid rejection or seeming too much. We force calm when we're really overstimulated or emotionally activated. We'll dissociate. Acting put together to avoid assumptions of carelessness or laziness. That's a big one. The laziness part and being called lazy, that's a big one because we are anything but lazy. And so being called lazy is just, it's so like I feel like I'm running a fucking marathon all the time. And then working twice as hard in school or work to meet expectations that seem really effortless for others. Will suppress impulsivity or enthusiasm to match neurotypical pacing. And ADHD masking is fueled not by deception, but by a lifetime of internal messages like, don't be too loud, don't be too emotional, don't be too much. It's performance wrapped in self-protection. And so, getting personal here, my personal experience, ADHD masking shaped most of my life before I even had the language for it. Like I said before in previous podcasts, I wasn't diagnosed as a kid. So I grew up believing I just needed to try harder. I had to focus more. I needed to stop being so impulsive. And I learned to overperform, which I can also say made my inner rebellion come out that much bigger. Gosh, I said that and I instantly just did this 2-second or less highlight reel of all of my rebelliousness coming through. But if I didn't want to do something, it was so hard to get me to do it. That's my generator energy, though, which that's a nod to my human design folks. And I learned to overcompensate, to appear organized, when internally, like, I was juggling so much, which I kind of chuckle at that, because if you ask my family or my husband, they'll tell you I'm a selective organizer, which fine, I mean, sure. But I also learned to stay calm even when my whole nervous system was buzzing. And this part has caused a lot of issues and challenges in my life. So when I finally was diagnosed with ADHD, hyperactive impulsive type, it was a really come to the divine moment. Everything clicked. And I finally felt like I could meet myself without judgment, and it was so liberating. So, the cost of ADHD masking. Over time, ADHD masking, again, chronic burnout, emotional overwhelm, inconsistent self-esteem, inconsistent emotional availability, long periods of under or misdiagnosed cycles, the feeling of broken or not enough, identity distortion, where who am I when I'm not performing? Oh, this statement, this one is a big one for me. And I still struggle with this, and I still continue to work through it, because it's like even after all of my years of education in this field and healing and cord cutting, there are still such big parts of me that are just like, why are you, like, what are you doing? You need to be doing something, Christine. So, and like autistic masking, the cost is not because ADHD people are fragile. It's because the world expects us to function from neurodivergent minds at all times in a neurotypical place. And that's a big problem. So, looking at masking through the neurodivergent lens is important. But masking also shows up in our hearts and in our relationships and our spiritual lives, even when there's no formal diagnosis involved. So, bringing in the spiritual and emotional masking aspect, these forms of masking are really less about cognitive wiring and more about belonging, acceptance, safety, and identity within a group or system. So where neurodivergent masking protects the nervous system from overwhelm, spiritual and emotional masking protect the heart. So looking at emotional masking, the I'm fine identity, this shows up when someone suppresses emotions or needs in order to maintain peace, avoid conflict, prevent rejection, not to be a burden, hold the role assigned to them as when they were in childhood. And examples of emotional masking are smiling through pain because you learned emotions make others uncomfortable. Oof. Staying calm when you're internally anxious or overwhelmed. Acting capable when actually you really need support or rest. Shrinking your joy or excitement because others might react negatively. Emotional masking is actually an attachment strategy. It's a way to preserve connection even when it costs your authenticity. And then relational masking, so the roles we played to survive in our family systems, this mask is shaped by your family expectations and early relational dynamics. And it's a topic we touched on in our last episode when I was talking about sibling wounds. So people may wear masks to be the strong one, to be the helper. And the examples of relational masking include becoming the caretaker in a chaotic home, being overly responsible or mature at a young age, performing success or perfectionism to keep the peace. So relational masks are also often the hardest to recognize because they feel like identity, even though they're adaptations. So again, relational masks are often the hardest to recognize because they feel like identity even though they're adaptations. Spiritual masking, when identity becomes a shield instead of a practice, spiritual masks is unique. It blends identity, values, and belonging. So it can look like presenting as calm, wise, or above it all, even when you're grieving, you're angry or afraid. Hiding doubt or spiritual confusion because you're supposed to be enlightened. Mirroring the beliefs of a spiritual community to avoid exclusion. Suppressing shadow emotions because they're seen as low vibration. And examples of spiritual masking is wearing the healer identity when you're depleted, staying silent about spiritual abuse or misalignment to keep a group intact. Spiritual masking happens when authenticity feels risky inside in a spiritual space, which that's so flippin' ironic because literally those spaces are supposed to hold truth and safety. Now, key distinctions here real quick. Neurodivergent masking is not being fake. It is translating oneself into a world without translational tools. It's adaptive, it's intelligent, it's protective. Emotional and spiritual masking are also not fake. They are identity strategies built for belonging, peace, and safety. And all three arise from the body's wisdom. Real quick, let's do a somatic check-in, okay? So as you were listening, did you notice how you felt? How does your chest feel when you're masking? What happens to your breathing? Where does authenticity feel unsafe in your body? Your body knows you're masking before your minds do. And for many of us, all three masks, neurodivergent, emotional, spiritual, they sit on top of something even deeper. And this rolls us into the next lens of the psychoeducation segment. And that's trauma, which is why I saved it for last in the psychoeducation section, okay? So masking and trauma, it's a big one. It doesn't just come from social pressure, neurodivergence, or emotional or relational. Trauma masking is probably, and though I don't have, evidence-based fact on this, but I'm going to say it from just a professional observation standpoint, is that trauma masking has to be the strongest, most rigid, and most identity-shaping mask. And as a direct response to chronic relational or developmental trauma. And this is important for me to say this really clearly, okay? Many people don't fall neatly into one category of masking. Autistic individuals, ADHD and other neurodivergent individuals, and highly sensitive or intuitive individuals often also have trauma histories, meaning their masks are layered, complex, and reinforced from multiple directions. This makes unmasking harder, not because the person is weak, but because the nervous system has been asked to manage far more than it ever should have. So trauma masks are built automatically, not consciously. Trauma masks form reflexively. Again, they're not chosen. They are created by the nervous system as a survival strategy, much like scar tissue forms after an injury. So for those not informed, not trauma-informed, real quick, trauma masks will arise from chronic unpredictability, attachment wounds, emotional neglect, shock states, chronic hypervigilance, role-based survival in childhood, repeated exposure to danger, instability, or manipulation, just to name a few. So these are not personality traits. These are adaptations. So because trauma happens oftentimes during critical developmental windows, the mask can become fused with our growing identity. Remember in our previous episodes when I talk about how personality is developed in the first 7 years of life. So common trauma-based masks Again, not limited to the parent pleaser, the peacekeeper, the invisible one, the rescuer. These masks were not chosen. They were assigned by the environment and reinforced through survival. So this is not pretending. This is patterning. The body's most intelligent attempt to stay safe in unsafe environments. Now, trauma masking in adulthood. PTSD-related masking in adults, it involves a lot of emotional stillness or numbness. You'll notice the I'm fine responses. It can be over-polite or over-accommodating. There's avoiding of anger, conflict, or asserting their needs. Or it can be the complete opposite of that, which then can be really volatile, combative, confrontational. You see tight body language and controlled facial expressions, extreme competence, overfunctioning, perfectionism, intellectualizing and internalizing emotions instead of actually feeling them. And these behaviors become protective stances to prevent reactivation, vulnerability, exposure, and unpredictable relational reactions. These are not quirks. These are literally armor intrinsically created. So trauma responses like the fawn, fight, flight, and freeze, those are a part of this. So you have your fawn masks, which is staying agreeable, helpful, calm, and selfless. You have your freeze mask, emotional numbing, dissociation. You have your fight mask, anger is armor, intensity and dominance. You have your flight mask, which is your productivity, overscheduling, avoidance. And each mask tells us a story about what kept you safe. And here's the part we often overlook. Many individuals who mask due to neurodivergence or emotional spiritual reasons carry trauma, meaning the mask is thicker, the layers are more complex. Unmasking can feel destabilizing. And realignment takes longer, and it's got to be gentler. So this overlap is incredibly common and not acknowledged as much in mainstream conversation. And I want to speak again from a lived experience. And I'm going to be very brief, and I'm not going to go into detail, but again, so I grew up as an undiagnosed ADHD kid, already trying to navigate as a nervous system that didn't match the expectations around me. I was also very highly sensitive. So I have a Pisces moon. So for my fellow astrology nerds out there, you get me. And so while I was trying to mask all of my traits, I was also, and this is in high school, I was also being sexually groomed by a teacher. And this was an experience that literally fractured at the time and throughout a lot of my adult life, fractured my sense of safety. It affected family relationships, and it shaped how I masked emotionally. And that led to multiple other traumatic experiences in my adulthood. So lots of layers there. But I learned, let me backtrack real quick. So because of this, I learned to be loved, I have to be submissive. I have to do things, quotation marks here, right. And because I wore my vulnerability on my sleeve, unknowingly, that made me an easy target to this teacher. And so I'm saying all this very intentionally, right? Because sharing personal stories is, slightly taboo in the therapist world. So I'm saying this very intentionally because trauma masking doesn't happen in a vacuum. It intertwines with our neurodivergence, with our family roles, spiritual identity, survival strategies, in a way that can make the mask feel permanent. And it did. It took me years for me to understand my masking. And let alone starting to unmask. And I want to add that I'm sharing this experience because I feel very strong now. I feel very confident in the work that I have done to process and reprocess and heal through all of this. So I'm sharing this in hopes that it serves as a beacon for transmutation, healing, and evolution, that we can take off our masks. So what trauma masking does to the self long term, it can create emotional detachment, difficulty identifying feelings. We distrust our own needs. There's chronic self, depletion, shutdown, or emotional numbness. And again, this is all not failure. This is the body doing whatever it had to do to survive. Now, trauma masks cannot be ripped away. They must be loosened slowly and intentionally through safety, attuned connection, corrective emotional experiences, somatic release. We nurture the environment for the inner child. We build internal resources. And this is why the mask as retainer metaphor is so fitting. Trauma masks were retainers created when alignment was impossible. Healing means replacing rigid retainers with more aligned ones. Masks we choose, not masks we inherited or were forced into. The evolution of trauma mask is this. When the body feels safe, the mask loosens. When identity strengthens, the mask becomes optional. And when the person is finally held, internally and externally, the mask falls away. Not by force, but by evolution. Wow, okay. That was a lot of education for y'all. I hope you're still with me. This next part is how we tie it all together in my Invisalign metaphor. And if you stick with me a little longer after that, I have a fun meditation, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, to do with you. So this next segment, the Invisalign metaphor, masks as retainers. Earlier, again, I shared that this was birthed out of a session with one of my amazing clients. I literally cannot reiterate enough how much I adore my clients. They are all so brilliant, and I really hope they know that. But anyway, so in this session, the metaphor dropped, like it just came out of me. Masks are actually retainers. They hold us in place while we heal into alignment. So going back to Invisalign, what does Invisalign do? It doesn't replace your real teeth. It gradually nudges them into their natural position. And each realigner has a specific purpose in the sequence. And if you add too much pressure or skip a tray, you get pain, you can get cracks, there's instability, and identity works the same way. So every mask we've ever worn has helped us hold a shape we were not yet strong enough to embody internally. Masks aren't lies. They're scaffolding. And so what do I mean by scaffolding? Scaffolding is the temporary structure builders put around a building while it's under construction or they're repairing it. It supports the structure while it takes shape. It gives the workers access to different levels. It holds everything steady while the foundation or walls are strengthened. So then when the building is strong enough, the scaffolding comes down. Like when wearing the Invisalign tray, once it no longer is hard to put on, it means you're ready for the next tray, the next level of your authentic self. And masks can function just like that. They can give us temporary structure when our inner world is still forming. They allow us to participate in life while we're still healing and learning. They protect the under construction parts of us until they're ready to stand on their own. So in a sense, masks are adaptive identities, transitional selves that hold us through certain chapters. And just like in IFS, internal family systems, where there are no bad parts, only wounded or protected ones, I'm going to say this: there are no bad masks, only masks that are misaligned. with who you're becoming. So why I think this metaphor can be so freeing and liberating is that it lets us stop shaming ourselves for masking. We drop that, I'm being fake thought pattern. So instead of the I'm not showing my authentic self, they don't actually like me, they only think they like me, it turns into the mask I'm wearing right now is a retainer that's helping me stay present and navigate the world. When I feel safer and have more resources, I can gently shift into a new mask that fits more authentically until I come into deeper alignment. Because honestly, we'll never completely be without some kind of masks. We are spiritual beings, guys. We're spiritual beings living in human bodies. And the body is a kind of mask all in itself. So being part of this wild, chaotic, beautiful, terrifying planet is learning how we are living inside a form that sometimes feels really foreign. So masks are not inherently bad, and it isn't wrong to wear them. They are protective layers, transitional phases, identity braces. You are still you, no matter which mask you have on. So, moving on into the spiritual and archetypal realm, which I'm super pumped to do, I want to offer you a reflective question to sit with you in regards to this Invisalign metaphor. If I think of my current mask as a retainer, what has it been helping me hold in place? Okay, so what structure, relationship, identity, or role has it been stabilizing? And remember, you should not rip anything off. You're allowed to graduate from one retainer to a next. Now, the mystical side of all of this, let's do that. Let's dive in there. Every ancient tradition understood something modern psychology is starting to begin to integrate and articulate. That masks are not deceptions. They're portals, teachers, and temporary identities that help us cross thresholds. So across cultures, masks were never about hiding. In shamanic traditions, they use masks to channel helping spirits during their ritual work. And if you are interested in learning more about shamanic traditions and practices, I totally suggest you get on the internet, you look up Silver Moon Reiki in Raleigh, North Carolina, or Cary, North Carolina, and check them out. They're amazing. Love them. We also have, in Greek theater, they used masks known as the persona, not to conceal the actors, but to amplify the inner truth, emotion, and archetypal roles. In Egyptian priesthood, they wore god masks to temporarily embody divine attributes. In Kabbalistic mysticism, it teaches us that veils of consciousness protect the seeker from receiving too much revelation before they're ready. Masks are archetypes we inhabit until we've integrated the energy they represent. I love this. So when I do journey work in my shamanic practices, I wear a mask, and it totally shifts my consciousness instantly. And it's not a disguise. It's just an interface between worlds. So masks as archetypal embodiment, Jungian, mythic, and ritual. In archetypal psychology, the mask is a bridge between your inner world and your outer expression. And there's many archetypal masks. And we don't do this because we're pretending, but because we're stepping into a larger energetic pattern our psyche needs access to. Jung described this as participation mystique, when the individual merges with an archetypal field to gain strength, insight, or direction. Masks hold archetypal energy until the soul is ready to embody it directly. So cool. So sometimes the archetype is borrowed, sometimes it's inherited, sometimes it's a wound wearing a costume, but it's never random. And we have shadow masks in Jungian psychology, and they teach us all kinds of things, and they reveal all kinds of things. And Again, that can be another topic for another time. But shadow masks are not lies. They're just unfinished truths. Really stinking cool. And then one other masking that I think is important to note is ancestral masks, the identities we inherit. Our families don't just pass down our DNA, they pass down roles, emotional positions, survival identities, adaptive strategies, trauma. And these masks were given long before we ever chose. So healing is not ripping them off, but evolving into someone who no longer needs the mask to survive. Literally healing your lineage. Really cool. The final mystical truth of this, so across mystical tradition, one truth really repeats. The soul reveals itself layer by layer, mask by mask, never out of deception, but out of mercy. So we are unveiled in proportion to our safety, to our capacity, to our readiness. Masks protect us until we are strong enough to be luminous, until we guide ourselves into the embodiment that we strive for, until our essence shines through unfiltered. So from me, your LCMHC Mystic lens, there's other masking that happens from your subtle bodies, which is mental, emotional, and physical. So like Invisalign gently shapes the teeth over time, masks shape these bodies until they're ready for deeper alignment. So you have the mental body, which is your cognitive retainer. You have the emotional body, which is the feeling retainer, and the physical body, the somatic retainer. And I'm not going to get into detail to that because I actually want to get into a podcast another time about subtle bodies, and I think that that would be really interesting. So I'm going to hold on to that. So wrapping up all of this information, healthy masks versus misaligned masks. Not all masks are harmful. Not all masks are distortions, and not all masks are meant to be removed. Some masks are developmental tools, roles that help us grow into the next stage of ourselves. Others, they're survival strategies. So identities formed under pressure that eventually become too tight or outdated. And so this work is all about discernment. So misaligned masks, rigid retainers that no longer fit. It's like wearing an old Invisalign tray. After your teeth have shifted, it begins to cause, it's not moving us. Or if you're wearing an incorrect liner, or say like you've moved past and you put in like 2 trays before, that can cause cracks and a lot of internal distortion. So from a healthy mask, it's flexible. They move with you. It's temporary, intentional, supportive, regulating, transparent. An example is the professional therapist mask that holds boundaries, the grounded healer or shamanic masks used during ceremony, the competent adult mask used during crisis, the parent mask that helps you stay regulated for your child. Healthy masks serve a purpose, then dissolve once your internal structure is strong enough to stand without them. So misaligned masks, they aren't wrong. They're just expired. The body's telling you, hey, I'm done. I want to transmute. Okay? So realignment in therapy and healing. Realignment happens when we help clients shift from survival into intention, transform rigid identities into flexible archetypes, update outdated patterns into empowered roles. And modalities that we use in therapy, we have the IFS parts work, which is understanding masks as protectors, updating them rather than eliminating. You can do somatic therapy, polyvagal work, narrative therapy, archetype and shadow work, hypnosis, NLP, energy work. All of it's amazing. Okay? So this last section before we get into the meditation, I just want to touch on provider ethics, realignment, not removal. As clinicians and healers, one of our core ethics is recognizing masks are protective parts of the psyche, not obstacles to authenticity. They formed for a reason. They emerged in response to conditions that the person couldn't control. So just like Invisalign cannot be rushed, we can't skip ahead. So identity work must be paced and attuned to the client's nervous system. We are not removing masks. We are helping clients grow into a self that no longer needs rigidity. Premature unmasking can cause emotional flooding, dissociation, re-traumatization, shame. So the ethical stance is always this: we loosen the mask. We do not rip it off. And the Invisalign model of the ethical identity work is, if masks are retainers, then we as therapists are the orthodontists of identity. We pace the shift. We never force vulnerability. So not unmasking must be chosen, not demanded. That part, not demanded. We help regulate the nervous system. We honor the protector. We track alignment. We strengthen the internal structure. That's part of what we do. And the goal is choice, not exposure. So this identity of orthodontics, not removal, but realignment. All right. So I have done so much info talking, guys. Whew. Are you ready to take a moment and just relax? I have this nice short meditation for you. You, of course, can skip ahead if you'd like to just hear the teaser for next episode, but you have a moment to take for yourself. I'd love for you to join me. Okay? So let's do that. Okay, guys. I call this releasing the misaligned mask and reclaiming alignment. It's a guided, gentle, trauma-informed moment, meditation, to wrap up and end this episode. All right, you ready? Take a moment to settle into your body. Soften your shoulders. Relax your jaw. Oh, and you ready? Take a nice, slow inhale. Oh, and a nice, long exhale. And place your hand over your heart, your solar plexus, or sacral center, wherever your truth lives today. Feel your inhale expand in your chest. Oh, and feel your exhale soften your belly. And just flow with that breath. And bring your mind to the mask you've identified with today. The one that feels outdated, heavy, misaligned, and no judgment, just awareness. Imagine this mask appearing in front of you now, and observe it with curiosity. What color is it? What shape? What texture? How does it feel in or on your hands? And where in your body do you feel its weight? Gently acknowledge its purpose. And I want you to silently say this, whether in your head or even out loud. This mask protected me. It kept me safe when I wasn't ready to be fully seen. And now, I am choosing alignment. I am choosing evolution. Now, imagine loosening the mask. Not ripping it, not forcing it, just easing the edges, softening the grip, letting the weight release. And when you feel ready, let the mask slide off your face and into your hands. Notice the difference of your skin, of your breath, your energy, and place the mask gently in front of you as an honored teacher. And I want you to say this, whether internally or out loud. Thank you Thank you. I release what no longer aligns. I reclaim what is mine. I step into who I am becoming. And take a nice, slow breath. And imagine a soft light and a color that feels like truth forming at the center of your chest. This is your current alignment, your chosen identity, your intentional mask. And let this light expand until it surrounds your face like an energetic retainer, a gentle guide bringing you back into your truest shape. And hold this light and breathe into it. Let your identity settle into the shape that feels like now. And when you're ready, whisper, "You are aligned. You are safe. You are here. I am aligned. I am safe. I am here." And take one final breath to seal this new alignment. And when you're ready, return back to your body, feeling your feet, your breath, your presence, and in your own time and space, slowly, slowly open those beautiful ancient eyes. Your masks were never failures. They were never proof that you were inauthentic. They were retainers, holding you in a version of yourself you could safely grow into. So when the inner structure strengthens, the mask loosens. When the alignment holds, the mask falls away naturally. And this is a gentle miracle of identity healing. If you enjoyed this meditation today, you can head over to my Ko-Fi at the LCMHC Mystic as a free gift to you to listen and come back to. And I'll also get this up on my YouTube channel under my Merkaba Sacred Healing Meditations playlist. And if you feel the call, I greatly appreciate the tips and donations. I also am in the process of creating membership tiers on my Ko-Fi that if you're interested in purchasing any e-workbooks or ebooks on the topics that we discuss, I'll have them over there as well. Big, big, big love. And remember, stay tuned at the end for a sneak peek into our next podcast episode. So until next time, you are everything and nothing less. Hey guys, thank you for joining me on the LCMHC Mystic Musings. If this musing resonated, please follow me at the LCMHC Mystic Musings on Spotify or wherever you listen. And you can also connect with me at merkabasacredhealing.com or on any of my social medias at the LCMHC Mystic. Deep gratitude to the listeners, donors, and followers. Again, you help this sacred corner reach a wider circle. And if you'd like to support or collaborate, please, please, please reach out. I'd really love to connect. Stay tuned now for a quick teaser of what's coming next. So, next podcast episode is all about DID. So, DID Beyond the Myths. So, have you ever wondered why different versions of you show up at different times? The one who holds it together, the one who breaks, the one who protects, who disappears. In IFS, it teaches us something profound, that every human has parts, managers, protectors, exiles, and DID is not the presence of parts. It's what happens when those parts had to take on extreme roles to survive, overwhelm, trauma. Oh, big breath, guys. So in the next episode of the LCMHC Mystic, we're stepping into one of the most misunderstood diagnoses in the mental health field, dissociative identity disorder. So not Hollywood's version, not sensalized switching, S words are so hard for me. But just the truth, both clinical and compassionate. We're going to be talking about how the brain creates parts under chronic trauma, the IFS lens on DID, what dissociation actually feels like, what DID is often misdiagnosed as, and the myths that have deeply harmed survivors. Because DID isn't chaos, it's not brokenness, it's the mind doing the most extraordinary thing it can do under a threat: divide in order to protect the self. Oh, another big, slow, grounding exhale. So if you've ever felt fragmented, if you've ever wondered why certain modes of you show up without warning, or if you simply just want to understand trauma through a deeper psychospiritual lens, this conversation is for you. Episode 6, DID Beyond the Myths, coming soon to the LCMHC Mystic. Thanks, guys.